What do I mean with that? And I'll make my video a bit smaller. Is that there's a spectrum that I think I, in the very beginning, would have found this very helpful to just orient myself in terms of choosing a product, right? And kind of all the things that are correlated with choosing a given product. So generic is really, the most generic product is the classic AliExpress type product that you can find on AliExpress or Alibaba, which, let's say, is a product that is very commoditized, that anyone can essentially, with an internet connection, can go and also find on AliExpress, and where the supplier is essentially willing to sell to anyone. That is very generic in the sense that anyone can, the barriers to entry are very low, and anyone can essentially join that niche or market with you, and the product in and of itself has no protection, right? There's no copyright protection, there's no patent protection, there's no trademark protection. The technology also does not protect it because, once again, it's a generic product. If we go a bit more right on the spectrum, it's still a generic product, but let's say private labeled. I think that's like the first big milestone, right? Which also usually is the path a lot of dropshippers take, right? They start with a generic product. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with starting this. In a way, I think that the barriers are so low also makes it easy for people to start and get a taste for how it is to have a business ultimately in the e-commerce space and start generating revenue and essentially learn everything there is to learn, right? But the next step is really to private label that product. That means actually putting the name of your brand on the product, on the packaging, maybe having a leaflet in the packaging. You can, there's other places where you can put your brand name on, right? You can laser it onto the product. You can literally put a sticker on top of it. So there's many different variations there. But the point is that when the customer receives the product, right, it's at least differentiated by the name that's on it, right? There might be hundreds of thousands of other merchants selling the same product, but the name is still a differentiator. And you can also differentiate already here slightly in terms of maybe you have a specific color that no one else has, right? You tell the supplier, hey, can you make this product in a unique color and only reserve it for me, right? Maybe you already have a different texture if that applies to your product, right? So there's already, like, I hope you get the idea, right? There's already a bit of a spectrum there in terms of private labeling to not be as generic. Then moving on, there's a product that you have designed and customized, right? So you're really talking about, now we're really moving towards the unique side of the spectrum. This is a product that you have actually thought about and modified, right? It could be a version of an existing product, right? But you have added to it somehow. You have designed or customized it in some unique way. It's still broadly based on a product that currently exists and people know and has perhaps a mass appeal in that niche. However, you have designed and essentially, personalized and customized it to a certain degree where if the customer gets a product, they will not get the exact same version from any other merchant. And finally, it's a truly unique product with patent protection or similar, doesn't have to necessarily have patent protection, but that's really where you have built and designed the product from scratch, literally designed it in, let's say, a 3D software, and actually have built and created an e-commerce store around that product. And actually, I want to quickly show you, actually, should I do it now or should I do it later? There's two examples I wanted to show when it comes to unique products. Number one is actually AeroPress. This is a product I personally use, and because I'm also familiar with being in the coffee niche, I think this is a great product where it's not such an old brand, right? Where they literally designed, if you're not familiar, I mean, they're very big. I think this is over $1 billion company. And the website is pretty slick. It's essentially a small coffee maker that's portable and you can take with you. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, but it also has its own patent protection. And the point is that someone, right, and I actually don't know too much about this story, someone or a team, I'm presuming, actually came up with a new way to create coffee, right? And then this was their e-commerce product that they launched. I'm actually not sure if it's on Shopify or somewhere else or where they started. And I think now they already got acquired, maybe even a couple of times. But the point is that this is a truly unique product that has been patented. However, it is in the coffee niche and still has a kind of a very wide and mass appeal, right, to people who like brewing coffee at home or while traveling, right? In the way it competes with the mocha cup, it competes even with the espresso machine, it competes with the French press. and many other ways to make coffee, right? So that's one example. Another example, also in the beverages niche, not to only choose that, but those two just came to mind, is SodaStream. Also very similar. I think, yeah, actually, I remember hearing somewhere, I think it was acquired by Pepsi already a couple of years ago for billions of dollars. So obviously huge brand. So going back to my presentation, and that is that this generic versus unique, why is this important? It's because on that spectrum, it's also correlated to many things that are extremely useful for you to know when you're thinking of starting a e-commerce business, let's say on Shopify or elsewhere, which is, let's start with net profit potential. I think what you need to understand is that obviously, if you go for a generic product, right, you will have a much lower net profit potential than with a unique product. However, this comes with difficulty being much higher for unique, right? So there's just a trade-off, right? And you need to be very clear about this trade-off. The harder it is to essentially create this product, right? The higher the net profit margin, but the harder it is. And therefore, you also have a bigger business defensibility or moat, right? If you manage to succeed, right? So again, this is assuming you manage to succeed with the generic versus the unique product. But if you succeed with the generic product, it's just a matter of time, right? Like thinking about the economic principles of perfect competition, where if there's an abnormal profit to be made, right, you can only make it in the short term with the generic product, because just by the dynamics of how the markets work, right, you will have competitors coming into the market because it's, again, generic and the barriers to entry is low. Anyone can go to AliExpress or Alibaba, and it's just a matter of time until they also flood the market, saturate the market, and essentially outcompete this abnormal profits to a kind of perfect competition equilibrium, if you want to get a bit economical here. And that will result in the long run for everyone to essentially have lower margins. There might be, again, the only way to win that is that you start with a generic and you move right to the spectrum. You start private labeling, you start customizing, you start offering all kinds of add-on services, upselling, cross-selling, great products that match it, and really build a brand around it and create amazing content, right? That does solve the problem somewhat. And there are winners, definitely, and sustainable businesses built that have started on a generic sense, but you can't just stay there, right? That definitely does not work long term. To be clear, you can make a decent amount of money as a Shopify store with a generic product in the short term, right? And I have done it, and many people have done it. And in a way, it's also a great way to practice and to learn and to get a feel for the life cycle of products and everything that you need to essentially build a store, a Shopify store, which this channel is about. And we've talked about, a lot of different angles of how to improve a Shopify store. So again, not saying necessarily bad things about it, but you have to be very clear about those trade-offs. And finally, competition, right, which is covered here a little bit. But again, the more unique your product, the less competition you'll have. And once again, that just ties into the barriers to entry, right? And because it's harder, naturally, you're going to just let less competition, because other people will also find it hard. And if you're the one to succeed in a harder kind of niche, or not necessarily harder niche, but again, with a product that is just harder to design, harder to, with that unique angle, still have that product market fit, you will essentially be able to get those higher profit margins and build a longer sustainable business with lower competition. Hey, before you bounce, check out some of the Shopify apps that we have built for our own stores, which might be useful for your stores. So we're very excited to hear your feedback, and check it out in the link below.